On past episodes, we've heard stories of people who found their calling after traumatic life events. On this episode, learn how one woman's tragic experience led her to being dropped into the spiritual deep end and how she's learning to swim with the help of her deceased son. Before I get started, I want to do a rare trigger warning for this episode. There is mention of miscarriage and a baby that doesn't survive long in this world. So if you are sensitive to those topics, please proceed with caution. I promise the story has a wonderful ending, and I use that word in air quotes because it's not really over yet. Welcome to the Peep Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Maroc, and I'm grateful you're here. The two big ideas behind the Peep Podcast are to show that the paranormal is more normal than most people think, and to connect the science to the psi, including ESP, psychokinesis, and intuition. On this episode, we're talking about spiritual contact, synchronicities, and healing. But first, I want to say Happy New Year 2025, and I have a couple of quick announcements. I hope you had a wonderful holiday season and that your new year is starting off well. I spent more time than usual resting, and it was much needed. Then on New Year's Day, I wrote my annual blog post reviewing last year's goals and setting this year's goals. One of them is to put more effort into marketing this podcast and growing its audience, and I need your help. If you enjoy the show, please rate and review it on your favorite podcast app, if that's an option. And share it with friends who might be interested too. Word of mouth is still the best form of advertising, and it doesn't work without you. Thank you. If you are a curious soul, you can find that post on my website at NicoleMaroc.com blog. I also updated the books page of my site to include the short stories I've written, one of them being the Choose Your Own Adventure paranormal investigation story. If you haven't already, follow the link on that page for your free download. I'll include the link to both pages in the show notes. Now back to tonight's interview. Annah Elizabeth writes, speaks, and coaches on the power to triumph over tragedy, no matter your adversity. She is the 5 Facets of Healing founder and creator of the 5 Facets philosophy on healing, a groundbreaking guide that blazes new trails in turning struggle into success and heartache into healing, and pioneers new conversations around loss, grief, and healing. A regarded healing specialist, energy medicine practitioner and teacher, and international spiritual medium, Annah incorporates a blend of academic and alternative modalities tailored to meet your individual, community, or company's unique and preferred needs. Let's dive in with Annah. Hi, Annah. How are you doing today?
I am well. How are you?
I'm great. I am so thankful that you are here to share your stories and talk about this healing modality that I'd never heard of before. So we'll definitely be getting into that. But before we get started on all of that, I just want to ask, how did you start your journey?
I start my journey into sort of the paranormal world, the spiritual world.
Yeah.
So I was always an academic, very much scientific minded. If I couldn't see it, it didn't exist. And I was very much a skeptic more than a non-believer. And I remember sitting in science class. I tell the story when I'm teaching all the time. I was in science class, and they're like, I'm like, remember going back to like first grade, and they say everything's made up of energy. And if you were like me, I was like, yeah, right. You're telling me this table's made up of energy. And
Mm-hmm.
so in 1990, my firstborn died following unexpected delivery complications. And um, when he was about two, when he would have been about two, I had what I now know to be a visitation from him. At the time, I thought it was a dream. And, but it was very comforting and very rewarding. And I always felt his energy around me. And I raised his brothers and sisters who came after him to just know he was always with us. And I used to say we carried him in our heart. But then I started having more and more experiences. So I was actually at an event speaking, presenting the body of work that I do. And this woman came up to me afterwards and she said, I don't know what you know about me, but I'm a medium. And I was like what? It
Mm-hmm.
kind of resonated, but didn't. And she held up her hand. So I know this is just audio, but she held up her hand like a little backwards C, her right hand with her thumb and her forefinger. And she said, Gavin is here. Gavin is my son's name. And she said, and he's showing me a ring. Does that mean anything to you? And
Wow.
I have to tell you, my world instantly like closed in on me, and the spiritual world possibility. That skeptic was like, oh my gosh, there's only three people in the world that knew this. So when we buried him, my mother had asked me if she could put a ring on his finger and send with him. Now, that is not something that's customary. It's not something that's tradition. It's not something that people typically do. It was totally random.
Right.
And there were only three people in the world that knew that: myself, my mom, and my then husband, who I say probably forgot about it 5 minutes after I asked him if it was okay.
Yeah.
And so I knew then that there was something there. Now, flash forward another year later, a couple years later, and I'm speaking on another stage at another event. And at the after gathering, the one of the fellow speakers came up to me and we started chatting. And she was already in the holistic world. And so I'm telling her this story. And every time I do it, when I have told this like probably 1,000 or more times, I mimic what that woman did. And this woman grabbed my arm and she said, do that again. And I'm like, do what again? She's like, do that with your hand again. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She grabbed my wrist. She held me up. She said, you did something with your hand. So I repeated it and she stopped right there. She goes, do you know what that is? And I said, no, what? She goes, that's the letter G in sign language.
Oh.
So again, Gavin made his presence. Now, that first event, I was driving home that night, and literally all of a sudden, my son, at the age he would have been, which was in his early 20s, all of a sudden plopped in just like I was staring at a human in the seat next to me.
Wow.
I could see his entire, and I could take you almost to the exact spot where I was on this backcountry road when he showed up. And I was like, well, hello, son. Like, what else do you say? And
Right.
from there, then things, I think I said before we started the call,
Mm-hmm.
I was dropped into the deep end of the spiritual ocean. And thank God I knew how to swim. And during that time, then all these spiritual concepts started coming to me. And what I would say is I was remembering what I didn't know I'd forgotten. That's literally what
Mm-hmm.
it felt like. And in the last eight years because that was 2016, the emergence. So I have been certified in multiple modalities. I've worked internationally as a spiritual medium. I teach energy awareness. um, I still do the coaching, but I actually started blending. So I have
Mhm.
coaching that is just academic based coaching model for people that that's what they're ready for and open to. And then I have what I call Coaching Plus, which incorporates energy medicine and spiritual concepts, that just different tools that I've come up with. And what I say is sometimes we can't talk or analyze our conflict and grief away because the trauma is stored in our body.
Mhm.
And so just meeting people with where they're at and what they have, and I'm constantly learning about new concepts, new modalities. And anyway, that's how I got started.
That's an amazing story. And I'm going to take a step back to where you said when he would have been 2, you thought you had a dream. Were you sleeping when
I
that first
was.
happened?
Mhm.
Okay, so I can see how you thought it was a dream.
Yes, I was sleeping, and so I was going through I had a 7-year period of like really significant loss events. So he had died, and then I had had a second trimester miscarriage.
Mm,
And there were a lot of things in my life that weren't going well. And the grief, what I discovered later after this was I had severe depression, and I was just masking it very well. I was very high functioning, and I probably had had depression for a while. It was low grade, and his death exacerbated it.
mm,
But I literally spent almost every day, at least once a day, asking what I call the universe. It's like, I can't take my own life. Please end my suffering.
mm,
And there were days I wrote in my memoir, there were days I woke up and I felt like a failure because I couldn't even get dying right, is what it felt like. And it was in the midst of that he came to me one night and he said, so my next child had been born, and he said, they need you.
yeah,
Um, so that was his mess. That was the visitation, and he was dressed in the baptismal. Um, the I bought a baptism outfit that I buried him in, so he was wearing what I buried him in.
yeah.
Yeah.
And was that enough, that message enough to get you started on the road to
It,
healing?
it was like, okay, it's again, the soul knows. I think we talked about that at the beginning,
Hmm.
even though my mind was very skeptical, the soul knows. And so it was enough for me to say, okay, like I, I just need to keep putting the proverbial one foot in front of the other. And it also, that was kind of the beginning of, um, I knew, even though all of the logic says it was just a dream, I knew at my core that it was more than that, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't have the language, I didn't have the knowledge. I had never been surrounded about or by any of those spiritual people,
Hmm.
and those concepts. So it wasn't a part of what I say is you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what questions to ask if you don't know what's out there.
Right.
So a part of me knew, but the bigger part of me, the only way I could describe it was a dream.
Yeah. So were you already doing the academic coaching at that point, or was that something you did later?
So that came later. So about 7 years in, it was a little before that, but So my little elevator speech is on May 11th of 1990, my firstborn died. Over the next 7 years, I had 2 second trimester miscarriages, 2 complicated but successful pregnancies, a 6-week psychiatric stay for severe depression, and 1 final pregnancy. 6 weeks before that child was born, I discovered that my husband and my best friend were having an affair. So all of that was in a 7-year period.
That's a
And
lot.
yeah, it was a lot. So going back to after Gavin died, literally hours after I heard the words, he didn't make it, I was lying in the hospital bed and I had this distinct thought, I do not want to spend a lifetime mourning him.
Mm-hmm.
What I say is I didn't know what that meant, what it looked like on the other side, or how the hell I was ever going to get there, but I knew what I didn't want. And then as those other losses began to accumulate, there was one question that drove me forward, which is how is it that some people go on to live happy, fulfilled lives following tragedy, mishap, or mayhem, while others succumb to drugs, despair, life avoid, or suicide? So that question spawned thousands more, and I relentlessly pursued the answers. So as I did research and talked with thousands of people and did my own reflection and read, all of these answers started coming to me.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one point during um, finding out, and I think we talked about this before, ultimately the answer that I found is we're all born with 5 universal gifts, and they exist in a hierarchy. They're the same for each of us. The gifts are the same for each of us, but how they're assimilated in our life are different. The details are divinely different and uniquely different. So as all of this was coming together, so they drive both our success and our suffering. And
Mm-hmm.
it's learning to understand how those elements work within us, how they drive our suffering and how they drive our success so that we can live our best life even in the face of adversity. So as all of this was coming together, it was never meant to be a coaching program. For 10 years, I was going around the country whenever I could rub 2 nickels together and just sharing this message. But partway through this, as one day I was like, I know I'm supposed to reach more people.
Mm-hmm.
I know how can I do this? And literally I heard you need to turn it into a coaching program. So then I started, okay, what does this mean? And as you will understand this, and probably a lot of our listeners will, I was getting what I now know to be downloads. I would
Yeah.
get these random thoughts, like I would be doing something else and I would get a critical piece of this work. And I still have the original notebook, and I would just like open it up and write all this down. At one point, I was like, I never thought of myself as smart. And as this started building and building and building, I was like, wow, I am kind of smart, to put this together. And one day I got a critical piece out of nowhere, like I was doing something totally unrelated.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this knowing that this is not coming from me. This is coming through me.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was a few years after that when all the stuff with Gavin started. And once I started understanding the soul and soul contracts, I realized he and I had a contract. And that was to do this healing work together, him from the other side of the veil and me here.
And that was actually what my next question was going to be was, do you think you had a contract? So that's totally makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And that's such a beautiful thing. So the going back to the 5 things that everyone has, can you list those out for us?
Yep. So they are the academic facet, which is an ability to learn. We all have an ability to learn. We just learn differently and we have different interests. We have an emotional facet, which is an ability to feel. Even people who are emotionally closed off or shut down, as we would say, they still have an ability to feel on some level. Then there's the physical facet, which is two-pronged. So we're all born into a physical environment and a physical body. They all look different, but we're all born into those two things. And then there's the social facet, which is the ability to connect to the world around you. And there's 4 different places that we connect. And for alliteration, I say people, pets, plants, and places. So some people, their social connection is animals. Like animals are their go-to, and you might have heard people say, I prefer an animal over a person any day. Then you have people who really love to travel, like they feel at home wherever they are. Some of us might look at them as gypsies, right? But
Mm-hmm.
place, they're really drawn to place. So it's understanding then within each of these facets, like how does that work and resonate within us? And then I put them in alphabetical order a long time ago, because when I first started, I was like, oh my God, how do I remember all this? Because remember, it was coming through me, not from me. So
Yeah.
the spiritual facet is the last alphabetically. And the spiritual facet, interestingly enough, this was long before I was dropped into that deep end of the spiritual ocean, but I knew that it wasn't about religion. So when this one came in, I was like, okay, you have people who are atheist.
Mm-hmm.
You have people of how many different religions are there? Hundreds. And some of them have contradicting information. So from a healing standpoint, like, where does that fit in? And literally what I heard is it's the divine self or the soul within.
Yeah.
So religion can be a support resource for the spiritual facet, but it really is. So I was getting this information right about that was sort of on the cusp of, again, the brink of being dropped into the spiritual ocean.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay. When Gavin came to you in your car, just I mean, because I'm imagining how I would react if suddenly somebody was sitting next to me. Um, did you stop your car? Did you just keep driving? Like what was your
I
actual
just kept
reaction?
driving. Just I just kept driving. And I think that, there's this saying, there are no coincidences and everything's a coincidence. I believe it's somewhere in between. And what I
Mhm.
say now is there are far fewer coincidences than we think. I do believe that there are still coincidences, but I do also believe that that ring, like,
Mhm.
all of this was divinely orchestrated, and everybody along the way chose to play their part and listen to the whispers. My mother having this random thought to buy a small ring and put it on his finger.
Yeah.
And then me applying to speak. That first one, I was asked to come and speak. It was a Toastmasters group, and they were having a big like gathering group of different people, and they asked me to come and share this topic there. So again, them reaching out to me to come and be a keynote at that event,
Right.
me saying yes, and then that person who was the medium there and coming up to me. So when that ring, I knew enough to know that, like, that was real.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that was so beyond anything. So when I saw him, and I had already seen him, as I said, at that roughly 2-year age, I just knew, like my soul knew. So when I saw him, yeah, it was a little bit of shock. I was kind of like, oh, well, hello, son. And yet there was just this, again, it was this knowing it. I don't know how to explain it, but I think it was just my time to open up and say yes.
Yeah.
And so it was, eh, the word that's coming to me right now is liberating. It just literally was kind of liberating. And I still have that image. So what's interesting is I'm not very tall. Um, I'm 5'2" on an 80s hair day. And so he's quite tall. And none of my other family is tall. His father's not tall. His siblings, they're average. But if I had to guess looking at him in the car, he's like 6'2", 6'3".
Wow.
Had he been born
Hmm.
and lived to adulthood.
Yeah.
And I'm as blonde as they come. And the joke about girls being blonde. I mean, I'm naturally blonde, and sometimes I have plenty of blonde moments. So when I do that, I'm like, these roots are real.
Yeah.
But he had dark, wavy hair, and he's quite lanky. So it's interesting. Yeah,
That is
that's
interesting.
that I just so that's kind of how I see him. And he was physically of the age that he would have been in real life. So yeah, I just knew. I don't know how to explain it, but
I I don't think you have to explain it. A lot of my listeners are going to understand the knowing
Mhm.
aspect of being psychic. Um, okay, so he drops into the car.
Yeah,
Um,
literally.
how did you get into the the more spiritual healing modalities? Like what what was your path to get into, for example, the integrated energy therapy?
Okay. So when I saw him, that was 2011.
Mhm.
And then I started seeing him more often. And then I started seeing my best friend's mom. I was still kind of questioning that. Um, I I don't remember which came first because it all kind of collided. I started going to some classes at this oh, I know what it was. I was introduced to these two women who they were doing house parties, and they both were Reiki practitioners, and one was a spiritual medium.
Mhm.
And so this is funny. I thought, okay, I was guided. I'm going to have this psychic party at my house. I'm like, still kind of a non-believer, but I had just like invited like 10 of my friends. We're sitting in my dining room. So the medium was doing one-on-one readings, and then the other woman was doing uh basically spirituality 101. So she's talking about angels and ascended masters and how we see them and blah, blah. And I knew nothing. So she has this little handouts, and she talked about the different ways that they give us messages and signs and symbols. And one of them was repeating numbers. I was seeing, I'm a numbers person. That's the brainiac in me. But I
Mhm.
was seeing numbers everywhere. And 333 over and over and over again, like beating me over the head. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, so what does the number 333 mean? And she says, the ascended masters are trying to get a hold of you and give you a message. And I was like, the ascended what? And then she says, well, like Jesus and Buddha. And I remember sitting at my dining room table going, yeah, right. You're trying to tell me that the likes of Jesus and Buddha are trying to send me a message in Podunk, New York. So that's a skeptic in me. And then let's see, the energy modality. So once I got introduced to them, again, the knowing in me, they were doing different classes and workshops. So I'm like, okay, that kind of made sense. So then I started taking some classes. So then my massage therapist, who I had had for 6 years, she I'd taken one Reiki class with these women, and I was like, eh. But then my massage therapist said, I'm trying this new modality. Now we had had many esoteric conversations, like what if sort of kind of discussions. But again, remember, I'm still like very much
Questioning.
grounded in the brain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so she says, I'm trying this new modality. Can I practice it on you? And I'm like, what is it? She goes, well, it's integrated energy therapy. And she goes, well, we work with the angels. And literally she threw her hands up in the air. We work with the angels and the energy. And I was like, oh dear God. Oh dear God. Like, you just do you. Like, I'm here for a massage to feel better. You just do you. But I had that benefit of having those 6 years of trusting her and knowing her and having these
Hmm.
conversations. And it was literally, and I kid you not, and again, it's kind of like The Ring. They made
Hmm.
it so obvious that I couldn't disregard it.
Yeah.
So I'll back up and tell you, integrated energy therapy works on 9 cellular memory areas in the body that store trauma energy, like anger, fear, shame, distrust, heartbreak, and betrayal. How many of us have had all of those?
Hmm.
So there's 9 cellular memory areas in the body. And when she was working on me, I felt, and she only did like a 5 minute, what we call a 5 minute empowerment session. So you can do this in different ways. So when she got to my right side around the rib cage, which is where we store anger, right over the liver, I felt this intense heat. I'm just lying on the table,
Hmm.
just doing my thing, just unwinding, right? Felt this intense heat. And there was a part of me that was like, okay, I wanted to say, I don't know what you're doing, but stop. And then the other part of me wanted to get off the table and run out the door. And this little voice was like, just, it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
it's all going to be okay. Just breathe. So she gets done. And I said to her, what was going on over here? And I pointed to that area of my body. And she says, oh, that's where we're releasing anger. I never thought of myself as an angry person. However, I had, and I don't wear t-shirts, but I had seen this t-shirt in Niagara Falls, and it was Calvin and Hobbes, and it said, every day of my life, I'm forced to add one more name to the list of people who pissed me off. I wore that shirt till it was threadbare. And I would come home at night sometimes and I'd go, this pissed me off, or that person pissed me off. And my then husband could say, everything pisses you off. And I was like, so after this, about the second or third time that she did this little practice right before my massage, it was like after the second or third time, and I was going through life one day, and there was something that happened. I don't remember what it was, but what I do remember was I had this, just like I had the knowing in the bed after Gavin died that I didn't want to spend a lifetime mourning him. I had this thought that, oh my God, that would have pissed me off.
Hmm.
I would have said I'm pissed off about that. And it was like a so what? Like it was like water rolling off a duck's back. And that's when I knew that there was something to it.
Hmm.
And then going back to coincidence, not coincidence. So I was teaching a class, the 5 steps to heal grief. And the very first class, I come and I'm walking around and I'm introducing myself to everybody. And this one participant pushes the guidebook, which I didn't know what it was at the time, pushes it forward, and she goes, I'm teaching this class. It's 100 and I think it was $190. And it's an all-day class, and I think you might be interested. And where my brain went was, you're taking a 5-week class, 2 hours a week, and it's $75, and we've just said hello, and you're trying to pitch me $190. Like,
Right.
my brain was like, this,
What
who's
is going
going?
on? Yeah.
But I went home, and you know how we get those nudges, right? Our
Hmm.
guides, the universe, our higher self is like, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. And literally, I was like, you know, that thing that changed your life? That's what that thing that she's talking about is. And so the next week at the class, I said to her, what is that you were telling me about? She said, it's IET, integrated energy therapy. And then I found out, you'll love this. Then I found out when I immediately signed up, found out that she had had the training for 2 years and had never taught a class. And it was the first class that she actually taught to certified people.
And
And
she knew you needed it.
yep. And
Like,
she was listening to, okay, those whispers, it's time for you to teach now. And last I knew, she only taught for a year or two.
hmm,
And that was it. And when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Isn't that what that saying
I think
is?
so. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was certified within um all three levels. So I practice and I'm a certification instructor for the integrated energy therapy modality, and that was all within within a year. I want to say it was like 6 months.
And you've been practicing for 8 years now? Is that
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep. So, and so many other things then opened up from that. So one of the things, if you don't mind, I'll just jump right in with the
Go for it.
paranormal aspect of it.
Yeah.
So shortly after, and it's actually one of the things that I teach as well with my students. I share with them because I think it's important. So I had just opened my office. I just gotten certified, and I was in my office working one day. I didn't have a client at the time, but I was just working. And all of a sudden, I felt this like energy in the room. And I looked around, and there were these little blue people all around my room.
Whoa.
And I was like, so there's so many stories leading up to this like deep dive in the spiritual ocean. But um and so many times I thought, yep, I flipped my lid this time. Yep. And I'm sure. And everybody listening, yep, I finally flown the coop. The men in the white coats, they're coming for me. And this little voice again was like, just chill, just chill. What do you know? You have a client coming in 2 days who identifies with what I called at the time aliens, extraterrestrial now or intergalactic beings.
Hmm.
So they're like, call her. And I'm like, oh dear God. But I'm like, I need to prove that I'm not, I've not gone over the edge. And so but I thought, I don't want to give her any information. So I phoned her and I said, you said that you identify with aliens. And she said, yes, extraterrestrials. And I said, okay. I said, I don't even know how to ask this question, but I'm like, just say it. I'm like, okay, is there some kind of is there a particular like race or species that, and she goes, yeah, Arcturians. And I was like, okay. And then I said, what do they look like? She described what was in my office to a T.
Wow.
And I was like, phew, okay, all right. And so then she comes in 2 days later, she's on the table. And as soon as I start the session, these little blue people, these Arcturians, they literally shoulder to shoulder are lined up around the table looking at her. And I realized the reason that they showed up in my office ahead of time, because had they shown up that day, it may have really sort of knocked me off my game because I was
Right.
brand spanking new in energy.
Right.
I was still really wet behind the ears. So yeah.
So were they participating in her healing?
Um, they were there, from what I could gather, they actually were there because they were in awe of her as a human. So what ultimately became determined through her, I had a couple of sessions with her. She actually is a young earth soul. So most of her soul lineage is off earth.
Oh, okay.
And so they were there to I want to say examine her. But it was very young energy, and it was very curious energy. So on some level, and it's funny, I've told this so many times, and you're the first person who's ever asked, like, were they participating? Um, and I started to say on some level they were, but yes, they were, because their energy was present in the room. It's all
Hmm.
collected, it's all interrelated. So yeah, they were there for both of us. And it was actually I believe it was the second session I had with her. Um, an energy came into the room. It was enormous. I believe that I thought he was ancient Arcturian, but I recently, about a year ago, was introduced to the elders. I don't know
Okay.
if you're familiar with them. That
I vaguely, so if you want to explain, that would be great.
I can't. I really it showed up twice, and I looked, and um they're ancient spiritual energy beings.
Okay.
That's really all I know. He showed up. To me, his energy feels masculine, but as you know, there's no masculine or feminine. I mean, we're all truly one. But he was in the corner. He later showed up in one of my meditations about 2 years later. And so I have since said to her, we share him. She was the introduction of him, but he's actually part of my spiritual team. And when I call my team in, when I actually go into meditation, he leads my team in every time.
Wow.
I haven't done any further exploration on that. So I really can't
Okay.
speak to that. But the first time I saw him, the name that I heard was the elder. So I've always referred to him as the elder. And then, as I said, I think it was about a year ago, I came across there is this group called the elders. So
I'm g definitely gonna have to look that up because I've heard other people mention them, but I've never actually dove into that topic. So now I'm like super curious.
well, and timing is everything, right?
Yes.
So
Totally.
maybe it'll be a deep dive that we can chat about later, um,
Yeah,
of that.
definitely. You wrote a book. You said you had a memoir, and that
Mhm.
was um well, I'll just ask, where can people find it?
So it's on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. They can order signed copies through me,
Okay.
so my website for anybody who's interested, is multiple ways you can find it. The five spelled out facets.com, or Annah Elizabeth, but Anna has an H on the end. It's an
Okay.
unusual spelling.
I'll put
But
the link in the show notes for
um,
everybody.
yeah, so that memoir is actually, remember the question that I asked, how is it that some people, so for anyone who's ever written a book, um, like the writing the book is the easy part. It's the editing
Mhm.
that takes so long. And it was hundreds of edits that I did on that manuscript over years. And it was in one of the final edits right when I said, okay, yes, I'm going to publish this, um, I was reading a passage, and I had written about the morning that I discovered the affair. And what I wrote is every piece of hope I'd ever held on to before had just been shredded. My faith, my trust in God and dignity, every spiritual, emotional, social, physical, and academic part of me laid in a heap to be tossed out with the garbage. It never made it to the garbage. I recycled it instead.
Mm.
And as I was reading that passage, those five things actually like became neon. And I heard, that's it. And I was like, that's what? It's it. That's the answer to the question that you've been asking. And so I was like, okay, then. And so then I started exploring that and connecting through Gavin, right? Remember,
Right.
all of a sudden, all these stories that I'd read started, pieces started coming together. So, yeah, thank you for asking about that.
Yeah. Does do you still have regular contact with Gavin?
I do. It's interesting. He comes and goes. So I just went to Scotland for the third time, in 2 years. I just got back, and uh, I was there this past January. I was there for 3 months in 2022. But this past January, when I was there for 3 weeks, he started showing up everywhere. I was finding his name everywhere. And he's been showing up again, random places. I haven't figured out exactly what that means.
Hmm.
But yeah, so he's always there and supporting me and guiding me. He's probably led me to you, so I just believe
Yeah.
in all of that.
Oh, I do too. I'm one of those who leans toward fewer coincidences and more synchronicities and signs that we're supposed to be paying attention to.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I say there are far fewer coincidences, I now believe,
Yeah.
um, than we think. So yeah.
So I will put the website, the link in the show notes. Do you have any upcoming events you want to talk about?
I do. I actually have, I don't have my calendar. I'm doing gallery readings. So I've worked as a medium in Scotland on Scottish platforms, and then I have clients as far away as India and New Zealand and Malaysia. And then, of course, lots here in the States. I'm doing gallery readings now, and I have had people asking me for online gallery readings. So I have that first online gallery reading coming up. Probably the best thing to do, there's the event page on my website.
Okay,
That'll save me trying to
look it
look.
up.
That's coming up soon. I'm getting ready to, well, I don't, it'll probably be a couple months, but I'm preparing an energy awareness, what I call energy awareness essentials class, because what I have found is so much of people's anxiety is related to um, their energy sensitivity.
Mhm.
And the back in that night that I had the psychic medium there, she said to me, "Are you an empath?" And I remember thinking, did you just call me a dirty word? Um, and so I've worked with people who actually technically diagnosed agoraphobic, and then several who are on that track of
Mhm.
becoming housebound, and three different people that I've worked with and helped them understand their energy modality and given them a tool that I created to expand their energy field. It's been wildly successful. So I teach it locally here in Raleigh. I don't have an in-person one, but I'm putting together the digital course right now. So that will be coming up. And then I have some IET certification classes coming up. So yeah, the website is probably the best place to look.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you taking, part of your Saturday morning to speak with me and share your story and introduce people to a new healing modality. Totally appreciate it.
Well, I truly appreciate you and the opportunity to just share and serve through your platform. I truly am grateful. It's an honor.
Thanks again to Anna for sharing her story with us, and thanks to you for listening. If you are interested in sharing your own paranormal experiences, or if you have an idea for an episode topic, please reach out through the contact form at peeppodcast.com. That's PEEP podcast.com. Remember, that stands for People Experiencing Everyday Paranormal. While you're there, subscribe to my newsletter to keep up with the podcast and all my creative and energetic endeavors. I only email it once a month. You'll receive briefs on recent episodes, information on any upcoming appearances, plus some occasional fun extras. If you enjoy the podcast, please give it some rating love on your favorite podcast app. Share it with friends and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Ratings, reviews, and shares help platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify know it's worthy of surfacing to new listeners. And as we build our audience, we have more chances to hear their paranormal stories. A huge thank you to everyone who's given the show some love. You are helping it grow. No matter how you support the show, listening, telling others about it, or any other way, I absolutely appreciate your being here. Thanks again for listening. Stay safe and be well.